Paratmanamekam jagadbijamadyam niriham nirakaram onkara vidyam yato jayate palyate yena vishvam tamisham bhaje liyate yatra vishvam. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Dear devotees, so today is the second session of the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Before we take up the next verses, let us just look into the first 3 verses which we discussed in the last class. So in the last class we have seen that Sri Krishna introduces the subject of the true nature of Ishvara. He makes a declaration. He declares through Arjuna to the entire humanity that he is going to present to all of us the true nature of the supreme reality in its all completeness. 2-3 words are very significant there. In the first verse he says that I am going to tell you about that Ishvara in its all completeness and totality, number 1. He says, Maya Saktamana Partha Yogam Yunjan Madashraya Asamshayam Samagram Mam Yatha Gyasyasi Tat Shrunu. Yatha Gyasyasi. He speaks about knowledge, knowing. How are we going to know the supreme reality? So who will know the supreme reality? Sri Krishna very beautifully uses 3 words. These are all very noteworthy and important points for every spiritual aspirant. He says, Mai asaktamana, number 1. A person who has fixed his mind on Ishvara, number 1. Yogam Yunjan, one who is meditating on Ishvara. Number 3, Mad Ashraya, who has taken refuge in Ishvara. So 3 things. One who has fixed his mind on Ishvara, one who is meditating on Ishvara, and one who has taken refuge in Ishvara. This person will gain the knowledge of Ishvara in its totality. In the second line, he uses 2 another words, Samagram and Asamshayam. This knowledge which this person is going to gain, it is going to be Samagram. Samagram means in its totality. It's a total knowledge, complete knowledge of Ishvara, and Asamshayam, without any grain of doubt. Indubitable knowledge. There is no more any room for any doubt about the supreme reality. So these are all very significant statements coming from Sri Krishna. When somebody experiences Ishvara, that experience puts an end to all the doubts regarding the supreme reality. Now, then comes the second verse. Two things again Sri Krishna is talking about. He is saying, Jnanam teham savijnanam idam vakshyami. I am going to talk about two things, Jnanam and Vijnanam. Again, two beautiful terms. I am going to talk about Jnanam. Jnanam means what? Usually, this term Jnanam is understood to be the experiential knowledge of Supreme Reality. But in this context, here Jnanam means theoretical knowledge of Ishvara or conceptual knowledge of Ishvara. Jnanam is the conceptual knowledge of Ishvara or theoretical knowledge of Ishvara, the knowledge which we gain from scriptures, from books. Information. And Vijnanam is what? Vijnanam is Svanubhava Sanyuktam, Shankaracharya says. Vijnanam is the experiential knowledge of Ishvara. So Sri Krishna is covering the whole ground. Initially, in our spiritual life, we all have only conceptual knowledge of Ishvara. If you just look into your own self, if you look into our own self, our idea of God is just an idea. We have not experienced it. A concept of God is not God. Then does it mean that it has got no place in our life? No, it has got an important place. Even to have the correct concept of God is a big attainment on the spiritual path. But one should not mistake this concept of God to be God. Idea of God, a theoretical understanding of God is not going to solve our problems. That is why, in spite of having this theoretical knowledge of God, our problems are not solved. Our problems will come to an end only when we have an experiential knowledge of God. That experiential knowledge of God is what is referred to as Vijnanam. So Jnanam and Vijnanam. Sri Krishna is saying that I am going to tell you about both these things. Theoretical knowledge as well as realization, experiential knowledge of the Supreme Reality. Then the second line is very beautiful. Yad gyatva neha bhuyo nyat gyatavyam avashishyate. He says, knowing which, after having this experiential knowledge of the Supreme Reality, there will remain nothing more to be known. What a great assurance it is. What a great declaration it is. This is the ultimate thing which human beings are actually speaking supposed to look forward to in life. Without the attainment of this experiential knowledge of the Supreme Reality, our life is bound to remain truncated and unfulfilled. It cannot become fulfilled. It is not possible. All the human strivings, this is the ultimate goal. All our life has to be a goal-oriented. Unless there is a goal orientation in life, what is the meaning of life? So this is the ultimate goal which Vedanta presents to us, and that is the goal of to attain the experiential knowledge of the Supreme Reality in its all totality. This term which Sri Krishna uses here, samagram, is very important. He says that I am going to present to you the total picture of the Supreme Reality. This total picture is very important. The partial understanding of God can be dangerous. Partial knowledge of anything can be dangerous. In fact, in the realm of religion and spirituality, it is this partial and theoretical knowledge of God which is the cause of all the conflicts which we see in human history. All the fight between different religions, it is only the fight between conceptual God, concept of God. Everyone believes that my concept of God is true and your concept of God is wrong. But anyone who has got an experiential idea of God, for that person will never come into conflict with anybody. That person cannot come in conflict with anybody. So there are two things: speculative philosophy and speculative religion. As long as our religion is speculative, as long as we are speculating about God, intellectually we are just forming some ideas of God, it is not going to solve our problem. And opposed to this speculative philosophy and speculative religion, there is another standpoint. That is the standpoint of Vedanta. The idea of reality which is based upon experience and not mere speculation. All fights are at the plane of speculation. As long as our philosophies are based upon speculation, as it is in the West, as long as our religion and ideas about religion are all speculative, our conflicts don't come to an end. So this chapter is extremely significant in this sense, that Sri Krishna is presenting to us the picture of the ultimate reality, which is based upon experience, anubhuti. Then alone our human life becomes fulfilled. So this is the great declaration which Sri Krishna makes right in the beginning of the 7th chapter. And then he says, anyone who has got this complete knowledge of the supreme reality, anyone who has got the complete knowledge of the supreme reality, for that person there will remain nothing more to be known. What an important statement it is. Neha bhuyo anyat gyatavyam avashishyate. There will remain nothing more to be known for this person. That means anyone who is gaining or attaining this experiential knowledge of the supreme reality, that person will become omniscient. That person will become Sarvagya. He becomes just like Ishvara. Ishvara is Sarvagya, and anyone who attains the knowledge of Ishvara, he or she also becomes Sarvagya, all-knowing, omniscient. So can we just imagine the fruit of this knowledge? Shankaracharya says, this is the super excellent fruit of the supreme knowledge. If that is the case, this knowledge is not going to be easy. It is going to be challenging. It is going to be difficult. Anything which gives such a super excellent fruit, it is not going to be easy, obviously. So that is what Sri Krishna presents in the 3rd verse. See, every verse leads into the succeeding verse, and you can see the beautiful flow of idea. If this great attainment has to come into our life, beyond which there is nothing greater to be attained, in that case this knowledge is going to be very challenging and it is not going to be easy. That is what he states in the 3rd verse. He says, among 1,000 persons perchance one person may be striving to get at this supreme knowledge, and even among those few who are striving, among the 1,000 persons, among them also maybe one person perchance may succeed in getting this supreme knowledge. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschit yatati siddhai yatatam api siddhanam kaschin mam veti tatvatah. So the durlabhatvam, the rarity and the difficulty of the attainment of this knowledge is presented in the 3rd verse, which is a great fact. Why is it difficult? It is only owing to one reason. We are still not eligible, or we lack that competence to have this great experience. That means there is something like developing our competence and eligibility. If you have to have the supreme experience, we have to cultivate. It's a culture, it's a spiritual culture coming from spiritual sadhana, which develops our eligibility and competence for this supreme experience. As long as we have not gained this competence and eligibility, we won't be getting this experiential knowledge of the supreme reality. It is not going to happen. That's why ultimately who succeeds? A person who has really developed, cultivated, nurtured this eligibility and competence. Now we will see towards the end of this chapter itself, Bhagavan Krishna is going to tell us something very beautiful. The biggest obstacle on the path of the attainment of this supreme knowledge. I don't want to talk about that now. Let us wait till we come to the end of the chapter. Towards the end of the chapter, Sri Krishna will be talking about that factor which actually obstructs the attainment of this knowledge. It is only when we consciously tackle that we shall be succeeding in attaining the supreme knowledge. So this was the great declaration. In short, Sri Krishna, in the beginning of the 7th chapter, is telling to all of us that he is going to present to us the knowledge of Ishvara in all its completeness and without any doubt. A knowledge which is gained through Jnana and Vijnana. First conceptual and then experiential. After attaining this knowledge, there will remain nothing more to be known. That means now we are attempting something supreme. When we use the word supreme, that means there is nothing beyond it. We are now, actually speaking, I always emphasize this point in all the classes. We have to remember one point. We are all seekers of truth. Religion means seeking the truth. It is not just believing in something. It is a profound and a penetrating investigation into what is my true nature and what is the true nature of this mysterious world which we are perceiving through our sensory system. So this is how the 7th chapter starts. Now, let us go into the next 4 verses in which what Sri Krishna declared, he is presenting us. The next 4 verses deals with that supreme reality and one of the finest presentations of that supreme reality. The supreme reality in its totality. Let us just see what this reality is. Krishna says, verse number 4, he says, Bhumirapo nalo vayuhu khammano buddhirevacha ahankara iti yamme bhinna prakritirashtadha apareyamitastvanyam prakritim vidhi me param Jiva bhutam mahabahu yayedam dharyate jagat etad yoni nibhutani sarvani tyupadharaya aham kritsnasya jagatah prabhava pralayastatha mattah parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjayah Mai sarvamidam protam sutre manigana iva. In these 4 verses, Sri Krishna is presenting to us a beautiful picture of that supreme reality called Ishvara. Extremely significant 4 verses, beautiful verses, and a very graphic presentation. He says, the 4th verse, Krishna says, Bhumi, Apu, Anala, Vayu, and Kham. Bhumi is earth, Apa is water, Anala is fire, Vayu is air, and Kham is Akasha. Means earth, water, fire, air, and Akasha is space. Earth, water, fire, air, and space. And then what? Man, buddhi, and ahankara. Mind, intellect, and ego. These are the eight things. Prakriti is divided into these 8 things. Very important, certain words are used, nothing to worry about. The meaning is very simple. Here, Prakriti, Sri Krishna is referring to Ishvara's 2 Prakriti. Ishvara is made up of 2 Prakritis, 2 facets. One is the lower and the other is the higher. One is the inferior and the other is the superior. The lower Prakriti and the higher Prakriti. This eightfold things which here Sri Krishna first presents, this is what is the lower Prakriti or Apara Prakriti. He says, Bhumi, Apo, Anala, Vayu, Kham, Mana, Buddhi, Ahankara, Iti Yamme, Bhinna, Prakriti, Ashtadha. This is my eightfold Prakriti. Then he says, Apara, Tu, Apara is, this is my Apara Prakriti. This is my lower Prakriti. Now, what was this description? This eightfold Prakriti which Krishna talked about. This is what is Maya. In one word, it is referring to Maya and the effect of Maya. All these things, whatever we are seeing here, this is all nothing but the Maya and the product of Maya. Maya and the effect of Maya. And this is the material dimension of this entire universe. Or you may say, to make it simple, Jada. You might have all heard the term Jada. Jada means that which is inert, matter. This is the material dimension of this so-called the world which we are experiencing. And this is what is Ishvara's lower Prakriti. Then, Krishna is saying, Ap itastu anyam prakritim vidhi me param. Itastu anyam. Different from this lower Prakriti, hey Arjuna, know my higher Prakriti. Itastu anyam prakritim vidhi me param prakritim vidhi. Know my higher Prakriti. What is that higher Prakriti? Jiva Bhuta Mahabaho. What is this higher Prakriti? Jiva Bhuta. Jiva Bhuta means what? Consciousness. Consciousness appearing or manifested in the form of individual souls. Consciousness manifested in the form of jivas. In short, consciousness. Jiva Bhuta Mahabaho ye yedam dharyate jagat, which is what is holding this entire universe. Then he says, Etad yonini bhutani sarvani tyupadharaya. Everything in this world has got these 2 things, these 2 prakritis as the source. Etad yoni. Yoni means, literally speaking, yoni means womb. Womb from where a baby is born. A baby is born from the mother's womb. Similarly, this so-called this Jagat is born from this source. The source which is made up of the 2 Prakritis of Ishvara, the lower and the higher Prakriti. So, etad yonini bhutani sarvani iti upadharaya. Hey Arjun, please understand that everything here in this world has got these 2 Prakritis as their source. Whose Prakriti? Ishvara's Prakriti. Again I repeat, this is a very significant statement. Everything in this creation, what we are seeing through our open eyes, we are seeing material things and we are seeing living entities, animate as well as inanimate objects. And whenever we are talking about, or the better classification would be, living things and so-called non-living things. Is it not? The sofa is a non-living thing. But we as human beings, we are living entities. So this entire creation can be classified into two things. Is there any other classification possible? Either things are living or it is non-living. Either things can be living or non-living. This is the sweeping, general categorization possible about this universe which we are experiencing. Everything can be put into one of these two groups, either living or non-living. Now, all these living and non-living things, Sri Krishna is saying, they have their source in these two prakritis of Ishvara, the higher prakriti and the lower prakriti. Lower prakriti is matter and the higher prakriti is consciousness. What a beautiful presentation of what this supreme reality is. Here there are certain important things to be noted here. Now if you just look into these three verses which we have just touched upon, Krishna is first saying, he is talking about the so-called the non-living dimension of this creation. Bhumi, Apa, Anala, Vayu, Kham, Mana, Buddhi, Ahankara. Means Maya and Maya's product. All these things, these 8 things which we have touched about, they are all the effect of Maya. It is Ishvara's Maya, which is appearing in the form of the so-called the material dimension which we are experiencing. Now that very Ishvara's higher dimension is there. Ishvara's higher prakriti is there, which is nothing but consciousness. And this entire world is nothing but a mixture of consciousness and matter. We can see so beautifully. So Vedanta uses a beautiful term, Chit, Jada, Granthi. Chaitanya and Jada. Is it not? In this entire creation you will see everything is a Granthi, a knot or a mixture of both consciousness and matter. Now you may ask a question, but Swamiji, we don't see consciousness in this table. We don't see consciousness in this sofa. We don't see consciousness in this pillar. So how do we understand that? Consciousness is there in everything. At some places the consciousness becomes manifest. Wherever the consciousness begins to manifest in and through the structure of matter, that entity becomes a living entity. This is the understanding of between the difference between a thing living and the another thing non-living. In the non-living thing also the consciousness is there. But consciousness has not started to manifest itself in that thing. In the sofa, in the pillar, in everything, in every matter, in every grain of matter in this universe, consciousness is there. But consciousness is not manifesting there. It is totally hidden and covered. Only at certain plane of evolution, at a certain state of evolution, this consciousness begins to get manifested in a very small way. Perhaps if you just look into a small organism, a single-celled organism, which you can look through a microscope, that organism, which is literally, it's a living entity. Consciousness has started to manifest through the so-called that material covering. That becomes a living entity. And this manifestation goes on becoming more and more clearer as the structure evolves. From that small single-celled structure, the organism becomes more and more complicated. That small organism becomes a complicated entity called a plant. Then it becomes an animal. And finally, we see the human beings. What is happening? The same consciousness which is totally hidden in a piece of stone, that consciousness becomes radiantly manifested in a so-called a human framework. This human framework is also a material framework. This body is nothing but matter. But here the consciousness is manifesting through this structure of matter. Whereas in a piece of stone, consciousness is totally hidden. So why I'm referring to this point is that we need to understand that whatever we are experiencing here, it is the mixture of these two prakritis. Whose prakriti? Ishvara's own prakriti. It is Ishvara's own prakriti which is manifested here in the form of so-called Jagat and Jeev. Everything is Chit, Jada, Granthi. It is a mixture of consciousness and matter. When it comes to this human framework, here consciousness is blazingly and consciously manifested. And it is only in the human framework that we can discover this consciousness. In no other framework, the discovery of consciousness consciously can be made. Even in an animal body also. The discovering of this consciousness consciously cannot be made. That structure is not eligible or fit to do it. That fitness is given only to the human framework alone. This is what our Upanishads and Shankaracharya so beautifully reminds us in the beginning of Vivek Chudamani. He says, Jantu nam narajanma durlabham. To be born in this human framework is the rarest thing to happen in this creation. Why? It is in this human framework that the discovery of this consciousness can be done consciously. Consciousness is manifested in all the frameworks, but only in the human framework its conscious discovery can be made. That is a great possibility hidden in the so-called, in the human life and the human being. And if we are not utilizing this human birth for this great discovery, we are wasting a great opportunity. So that is the one tone you will find in the Upanishads. Ihached avedit atasatyam asti nachediha vedin mahati vanashti. Ken Upanishad says, if you have consciously discovered the supreme reality in this human body, in this human life, you have done the greatest thing which you are supposed to do. And if you have not done it, mahati vanashti, great is the destruction. Destruction means nothing else. The cycle of birth and death continues. After the fall of this body, again we are born into some other structure. And this goes on based upon our karma and karma phala. So anyhow, so in these three verses here, Krishna is presenting to us a beautiful picture of reality. Ishvara's twofold prakriti. Lower prakriti is matter, higher prakriti is consciousness, and this entire universe and the so-called living entities which we are experiencing here, they all have these two prakritis as their source. Shankaracharya makes a wonderful, amazing, extremely scientific observation. While commenting upon these verses, he says, in Sanskrit, beautifully he says, Prakriti dvayadvarena aham sarvagya ishvaraha jagata karanam. So beautiful. Shankaracharya says, in and through these two prakritis, Ishvara, who is Sarvagya, becomes the cause of this entire universe comprised of living as well as non-living things. Extremely scientific observation. Once again I repeat. Shankaracharya says, in and through these two prakritis. Two prakritis means what? Matter and consciousness. Matter is Ishvara's lower prakriti. Consciousness is Ishvara's higher prakriti. In and through these two, matter and consciousness, that Ishvara who is Sarvagya becomes the cause of this entire universe which is comprised of living as well as non-living entities. That means, again, some conclusions have to be drawn from this brilliant statement. First, kept before us by Sri Krishna and so beautifully commented upon by Bhagwan Sri Shankaracharya. What is the outcome of this great understanding? That means, actually speaking, whatever we are seeing here, whatever we are perceiving here through our sense organs, we should understand that this is nothing but Ishvara and Ishvara alone. How? How is that we are not understanding that it is Ishvara? Now see, we are all devotees. We are all bhaktas. As bhaktas, for a bhakta, the bhakta's main concern is to get connected with Bhagavan, is it not? As a seeker of truth, our main concern is to come in touch with the Supreme Reality. The question is, are we not in touch with the Supreme Reality even now? Are we not in touch? Are we not connected with Ishvara even now? To talk about connection is also wrong. When we talk about connection, connection is only possible between two different things. Now, the beautiful outcome of this is that, are there two different things existing here? Vital questions to be probed into. Vital questions, very serious questions. If you are a seeker of truth, you will spend hours and days and months and years to understand this point. Are there, actually speaking, two distinct entities existing here? One entity called world and Jiva, and the other entity called Ishvara? Are there two distinct entities? No. It is only in ignorance that we are thinking that I am a Jiva and Ishvara is something separated from me. What is Sri Krishna's great declaration here? Etad yonini bhutani sarvani tyupadharaya aham krishnasya jagata prabhava pralayas. So beautiful. These two prakritis of mine, my prakriti, Krishna is referring to himself as Ishvara, that Ishvara Tattva. These two prakritis which belong to me, in and through these two prakritis, I am the source of everything that is existing here. When I talk about everything, it is both the animate as well as the inanimate, the living as well as the non-living. Everything means everything that we know of, everything that we are perceiving, everything that you can imagine about, whatever, even your imagination, everything is a mixture of these two prakritis. You cannot experience anything without these two. We are all experiencing these two prakritis. The question is, to whom does these two things belong? It belongs to Ishvara. It belongs to Ishvara is also a wrong statement. It is Ishvara. A great principle that Vedanta keeps before us is what? Cause and effect. Are they two different things? Cause and effect. Are they two different things? They are not two different things. Effect is what? Effect is nothing but cause manifested. Cause manifested is effect. And effect involved is cause. Effect which is involved means which is not manifested. Effect which is still hidden inside the cause is the cause. And cause is that which becomes manifested. When cause becomes manifested, it becomes effect. So what we are referring to as effect, it is nothing but cause in a different form. It is cause itself. Now when Sri Krishna is talking about himself, means Ishvara as the cause of this Jagat, this Jagat is nothing but the effect of Ishvara, and the effect is not different from the cause. This Jagat is nothing but Ishvara and Ishvara alone. To understand this, some of the very beautiful illustrations we find in the Upanishads itself. In the Mundaka Upanishad, there is a fine illustration which says that Yathorunanabhi srijate granhate cha Yatha urnanabhi srijate grunhate cha. Urnanabhi is spider. Just as the spider weaves the web, we know, is the spider taking some second material and weaving the web? The web which is created by these, I would not use the word created, the web is projected from the spider's own body. The so-called the web, the strings, it is coming out of the spider's own body. It is just throwing it out. And then again it takes it back. And after weaving the web, the spider is moving in its own creation. The web is its own creation. The web is its own projection. Projection is a better word compared to creation. The web is its own projection, and the spider is moving on the thing which it itself has projected, which is its own self. And again the spider, what does it do? It takes back the entire web into its own self. The spider has this amazing capability to throw the web out and also to take the web inside its own self. See the observation of these rishis. How minutely they might have observed these things. A rishi sitting in a kutia, perhaps he is seeing how the spider is weaving its web. And looking at it, he is connecting it to the supreme reality. See the brilliance of it. And see the scientific temper of this great illustration. Ishvara and this Jagat is like that. They are not two different things. Ishvara from its own Prakriti is projecting this universe, and again it takes this universe back into its own self. I am, Krishna is saying, Etad yonini bhutani sarvani iti upadharaya aham krishnasya jagata prabhava pralayastatha. It is in me. Through me, this prabhava takes place. Prabhava means the projection of the universe takes place. And pralayastatha. Into me, everything is dissolved. Just like the spider. Just look into. It is so thrilling. These rishis, how minute their observations are. Perhaps sitting in their hermitage. We don't know. Deeply in profound meditation. Communing with that supreme reality. That rishi is perhaps seeing this spider waving the web, how it is projecting the web and taking the web back into its own self. And the rishi is making this great utterance. He is saying, Yathornanabi srijate grunhate cha. Just like that spider throws out the web and again takes the web back into it. Similarly, the so-called, this entire universe, Jagat, is thrown out or projected from the Ishvara through Ishvara's two Prakritis, which is matter and consciousness. And again it takes the entire Jagat and so-called Jiva and this entire universe back into its own self. What a profound observation. So the conclusion of this great illustration is what? What is ultimately existing? Ishvara and Ishvara alone is existing. Another beautiful definition of the Supreme Reality comes in Taittiriya Upanishad. Of course, in all the Upanishads it's come. I should not talk about one Upanishad, but what is coming to my mind here is that a beautiful definition of the Supreme Reality, where Taittiriya Upanishad says, what is the Supreme Reality? Yato va imani bhutani jayante, yena jatani jivanti, Yat prayanti abhisamvishanti tad vijigyasasva tad brahmeti. That is Brahman. Again, we are using some terms. You call that supreme reality Ishvara. You call that supreme reality Bhagavan. We call that supreme reality as Brahman. Doesn't matter. There is one supreme reality from which Yatova imani bhutani jayante. From where all these so-called entities are projected. All these entities are projected from that one supreme reality. Yatova imani bhutani jayante. Yena jatani jivanti. And all these projected entities are sustained by it. And yat prayanti abhisamvishanti iti. And all these projected entities, they are once again taken back into that very reality. Tat vijigyasasva, that has to be inquired into. That the Upanishad says, Tat vijigyasasva, that should be inquired into, that should be experienced. That is the thing which we have to experience. That experiential knowledge is what Sri Krishna is talking about in this 7th chapter. Vijnanam svanubhava sanyuktam. Anubhuti of that entity from which this entire Jagat is projected, in which this Jagat is existing, and into which this entire Jagat gets dissolved. That is that supreme reality which we have to experience in life. Now, the thing projected and the thing which is projecting, they are not two different things. The thing which is projecting is itself projected. So, whatever we are experiencing here, it is all nothing but Ishvara and Ishvara alone. Shankaracharya gives beautiful illustrations in many of his commentaries, in many places. Some of the beautiful examples which he gives, which comes to my mind. Recently we were studying Aparokshanubhuti. In Aparokshanubhuti, he makes some beautiful illustrations. Just like a clay and pot. Now tell me, what we are referring to as pot, a pot which is made up of clay, what is actually existing? Is the pot existing? It is clay. In ignorance, we are referring to that thing called pot. Actually, what is that thing? In that pot, an earthen pot, what is actually existing? It is clay alone. Is it not? Whether it is pot, whether it is a jar, whether it is a tumbler, whether it is a plate, the shapes may vary, but all these different so-called objects with different forms and different names, they all are made up of the same stuff called clay. Is it not? It is the clay which is appearing in the form of pots and plates and tumblers and so on. So, is there a distinct existence for these entities and objects called pots and tumblers and plates? Do they exist as a distinct entity from the clay? They don't have a separate existence at all. It is clay and clay alone, which is appearing in the form of the jar, the plate, the tumbler, and the pot. So, you may say, clay is the cause, and pots and jars and tumblers and plates, these are the effect. Cause and effect, they are not two things. What we are referring to as effect, they are nothing but the cause. It is nothing but clay. Take the example of gold. Gold and the different ornaments made out of gold. We all know women, they use different ornaments all made up of gold. Whether it is a earring, whether it is a necklace, whether it is an anklet, whatever it is. Essentially, what are these different items made up of? Whether it is an earring or whether it is an anklet, whether it is a necklace, whether it is a bangle, it is gold. In ignorance, you may be focused upon these different shapes and forms. But for a wise person will be seeing that it is gold. Similarly, here also we are saying this is a man, this is a woman, this is an animal, this is a plant. A wise person will say that it is Ishvara and Ishvara alone. Just like the clay is appearing in the form of pots and jars and tumblers and plates, it is one Ishvara which is appearing in the form of the man and the woman and the plant and the animals and the inanimate world which we are seeing through our senses. It is Ishvara and Ishvara alone. Nothing else. This is what is the supreme picture of reality. We are in search of reality. We are all looking for God. Whereas actually speaking, we are always seeing God, but we never understood this point. This is the paradox of human life. Shankaracharya says in his oneness place that we have always been seeing God in our life, but we never understood this point. We have in our life never experienced anything apart from God. This is the statement of the Upanishads. Can you believe? The Upanishads wants to tell us that, my dear children, we have never experienced anything apart from that supreme reality. We are always seeing that supreme reality. You call it Ishvara, you call it Brahman, you call it by any other name, doesn't matter. We have been always seeing that supreme reality. Even now we are seeing that supreme reality. Nothing else. We are not understanding this point. And that is why we are suffering in life. Upanishads teach us to see the reality with our open eyes. And that vision can come only from the Shastras and from the Guru Vakya. Please underline this point 1,000 times. This doesn't come from any other source. This Samyak Darshan, this right vision, comes only from the Upanishads and from the mouth of the Guru. It cannot come from any other source. This is the great, great declaration of our Rishis. It has to come from the Shastras and the Guru. Now that is the great vision which is given to us by Sri Krishna here. Again, I once again repeat. Then Sri Krishna says here, you see, if this is the case, whatever we are seeing, it is Krishna is saying. Krishna is referring to himself as Ishvara. He is Ishvara. Where is Krishna? It is Ishvara. Where is Krishna here? It is Ishvara. This Ishvara is this Jagat. Jagat is nothing but Ishvara. Matta parataram nanyat kinchadasti dhananjaya. Hey Arjun, there is nothing whatsoever existing greater than me. There is nothing superior to me. Mai sarvamidam protam sutre manigana iva. What a beautiful statement. Krishna is saying, see, this picture of supreme reality which I have presented, the supreme reality which is appearing in the form of this Jagat, and when you properly investigate, you will find that there is nothing called Jiva in Jagat. It is all that supreme reality alone. It is that Ishvara and Ishvara alone. And then Krishna is saying that there is nothing greater than this. There is nothing superior to this Ishvara, the supreme reality. Matta parataram na anyat kinchidasti. O Dhananjaya, hey Arjun, there is nothing greater than this Ishvara. And I, that Ishvara, my sarvamidam protam, in me, I, as a thread, I am threading all these entities just like a thread which threads all the different pearls or flowers. My sarvamidam protam sutre manigana iva. Just like when you make a garland, you need a thread and flowers. And all these flowers are held together by the thread. Similarly, Krishna is saying this entire universe is held through me. Me who am just like a thread running through everything. And the thing through which I am running through is me alone. It is not that there are two different things. Again, we have to come to this point. When he is saying that I am like a thread which is holding this entire universe together, it is not that universe is a second entity. The thread as well as the flower, they are one and the same entity. Mai sarvamidam protam sutre manigana iva. That means, you see, what we are actually experiencing here is nothing but that supreme reality. Now, this is what Swami Vivekananda so beautifully puts it. Swami Vivekananda's all the statements are from the Upanishads. What else? Did he speak anything new? He was just retelling. I always emphasize this point. These incarnations, they are all retellers. No incarnation has ever spoken anything new, and no incarnation can ever speak anything new apart from what the Upanishads have kept before us. All the incarnations were retellers of the wisdom of the Upanishad. And the great wisdom of the Upanishad has been this, that whatever is existing is that supreme reality. What actually matters is knowledge of it and ignorance of it. As long as we are ignorant about it, we think that Jiva and Jagat is existing. When knowledge comes, you will see with your open eyes what I was thinking to be Jiva and Jagat is nothing but Ishvara and Ishvara alone. It is Ishvara's two Prakriti which is manifested in the form of Jiva and Jagat. So beautiful. So Swami Vivekananda does that beautiful poetry. You all know. Sakhar Prati. He says there, Bahurupe Sammukhe Tumar, Chadiye Kothai Kojicho Ishwar. So beautiful. God is standing in front of you in so many forms. Leaving this God, which God are you searching for? What a striking statement. Sri Krishna, Shankaracharya, Upanishads, all same vision. Seeing God with open eyes. See, we think we limit the idea of God to one certain form. It is good. As a beginner, it is good. We need it. Most of us, 99.9% of the humanity, they need a certain form of God. But as we grow in spiritual life, as we evolve, as our idea, the concept of God keeps on evolving, our experience of God also will be evolving. Earlier, what you were thinking, God limited to a certain form, God limited to a certain place. We slowly begin to evolve from that idea, and then we begin to see God everywhere. God is not limited to any form. In fact, if you just look into the Upanishadic standpoint, the most beautiful form of God is this. What we are seeing through our open eyes. This is nothing but Ishvara. That is what Sri Krishna so beautifully presented in these 4 verses. Once again, before I close, let me just wind up the whole thing. Sri Krishna here is saying, first he is presenting the lower dimension of Ishvara's Prakriti, lower Prakriti, Apara Prakriti, which is nothing but so-called matter, the material dimension. Then he presents the higher Prakriti, the superior Prakriti, which is nothing but consciousness. And these are the two Prakritis. Whose Prakriti? Ishvara's own Prakriti. Consciousness and matter, they are nothing but Ishvara's two Prakriti. And then Krishna says, through Ishvara's two Prakriti, Ishvara is the cause of this entire universe, which is comprised of living and non-living entities. And then he says, Matta parataram nanyat kinchidasti, mai sarvamidam protam, sutre manigana iva. There is nothing superior to me. Now see, Krishna had declared that I am going to present to you that ultimate picture of Ishvara, the supreme reality, in its totality. I have to speak something about this totality, which I will do it perhaps in the next class. Today the time is over. It's very important. See, we have to understand the reality in its totality. Better I do it in the next class. It's already time is over. But it's very important. There I have to speak about some Sri Ramakrishna's beautiful illustration also, which comes that the supreme reality is not only transcendent, it is also immanent. The supreme reality is not only nirguna, it is also saguna. But first we need to understand. I can take 2-3 minutes. It's very important because as we have spoken about this dimension, we need to just touch upon that point. You see, as Sri Krishna says that the supreme reality is made up of matter and consciousness. Presently, we are all tied down to the material dimension alone. We are not consciously aware of our conscious dimension, consciousness dimension. That is our problem. So we need to experience that higher Prakriti, which is consciousness. And when we have to experience that higher Prakriti of Ishvara, which is consciousness, we have to turn away from this so-called the changing dimension. This what we are seeing through our eyes is the changing dimension. So we have to turn away from this changing dimension in search of the unchanging dimension, which is consciousness. Consciousness never changes. The higher Prakriti of Ishvara is the unchanging dimension which never changes. consciousness, which is referred to as Atman, is unchanging, permanent. Here, what we are seeing through the sense organs, the material dimension, it is continuously changing. It is pratikshanam anyatha sabhava. So first we need to experience that higher prakriti of Ishvara, which is consciousness, for which we have to turn away from this changing dimension in search of the unchanging, that unchanging which is referred to as Brahman. Then when you experience that unchanging dimension which is referred to as Brahman, from that standpoint, when you will again look at this changing dimension, you will be seeing that what you left behind, what you were referring to as transient and changing, it is all nothing but that very unchanging appearing in the form of the changing. It is that very Brahman which is appearing in the form of the so-called the changing dimension and the material dimension, which is appearing in the form of Jiva and Jagat. It is all nothing but Brahman and Brahman alone. This is a very, very significant point. Sri Ramakrishna beautifully tells this. To reach the roof, we leave the steps behind. Is it not? When you came to the first floor, you left behind all those stairs behind. Is it not? You came to this classroom by climbing the stairs. To reach the roof, you have to leave the steps behind. Initially, you have to leave this changing dimension behind to reach the roof, which is consciousness. But once you have reached there, from there, when you again look at the stairs, you will discover, it's a discovery. You will discover that what you left behind is all nothing but that very Brahman. This is the complete picture of reality. This is what Sri Krishna is talking about here. This is what Shankaracharya is commenting here, that whatever we are seeing here, it is all Ishvara and Ishvara alone. So that is the ultimate picture which we find in these 4 verses. We'll take up. Now, this very subject is now taken forward. In the next class will be a beautiful presentation through illustrations. Sri Krishna is going to present to us a series of items to show that, see how Ishvara is the very essence of this so-called Jagat. It is existing in everything. It is Ishvara and Ishvara alone. So this is going to be the main topic of the next class. Let us stop here. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat.